Okay, everyone, we'll get started. Welcome. My name is Kristine Roberts. I am the Executive Director at the Nebraska United Methodist Foundation. We have this seminar webinar for you today on Leaving a Legacy Society Basics. Okay, so here's what you're going to learn today. Obviously, I'm welcoming you, giving you an overview, and then we'll have Reverend Dr. Janice Japp speak next about Camp Fontanelle's Giving That Grows Legacy Society and how that works in an actual action step, so you can see how that works. And then Ashley, Ashley, can you say your last name for me, please?
It's Cheung.
Ashley Cheung is with the Church of the Resurrection in Kansas City, and that is an actual church example for you of how a legacy society works. And then at the end, we'll wrap it up with Matt McKeever. He is an estate planning attorney here in Omaha at Burnett Wilson Law. And he might be wandering in a little bit. He did have a court hearing this morning, but he should make it back in time. Otherwise, one of his law partners should be able to cover the content of his portion too. So don't be surprised if you don't see Matt, but he will get the information across to you. A little housekeeping, I will ask you if you have a question. The people in the room here with us, we cannot see you, even though you can see us. And so if you do have a question when we come to questions, please raise your hand in the Zoom screen because I can see the participant list and I can see if you raise your hand. And also I do have the chat box up. And so if you chat your questions in the Zoom chat, I can see that as well. I would say I've tried to plan it so that there is enough time for questions at the very end. However, I believe each speaker will also leave a little bit of time after their individual presentations if you have any particular questions for them that can't wait till the end. So all of that will be good to go. Okay, so let's dive right in. Okay, the Nebraska United Methodist Foundation. We are sponsoring this webinar seminar today. We would like to always ask if your church or Methodist ministry would like us to come speak to you or your congregation or committee, please have us come do that. I need to update that. It's now 2023 and here we still are. So still here to serve you since 1965. A little bit about what we do. Our mission statement is to support the ministries of the local church and the Great Plains United Methodist Conference through the development of gifts and the stewardship of resources entrusted to the foundation in support of God's work. And just so that everyone is aware, in 2018, the board did revise its bylaws so that we can also serve churches and ministries formerly associated with the Great Plains United Methodist Church Conference. And so if you have any questions about that, please do email or call me separately. So who we are and what we do, we are an investment service. So it's similar to your Northwestern Mutual, your Edward Jones, your Wells Fargo, except we're a foundation like Nebraska Community Foundation, your local area community foundation. Our fees are minimal or low. There's no, like, for example, if you want to do an early withdrawal, there's no penalty fees. We invest monies for the Nebraska United Methodist churches, again, churches formerly associated with United Methodist Church, and Methodist organizations and ministries. We can do individual church accounts, endowment funds for churches, donor advised funds, and named endowment funds for individuals, as well as a whole host of many other things. If you're interested in learning more, I can help with that. We also have some literature that I can send you. Other examples are charitable gift annuities, retained life estates. I can help get you organized to start your estate plan with a will or a trust. I cannot do those documents for you, but I can help you get organized to get going with those. We provide education. We give seminary scholarships for future ministers, and that includes course of study scholarships as well. We do pastoral education and support with continuing education, fund development and endowment workshops, pre-capital campaign planning, gift and estate planning seminars like today's seminar/webinar. And what I've been doing mostly is the Sunday morning conversations relating to our services, stewardship, and generosity. I've had quite a few pastors ask me to come specifically in the fall during stewardship time to talk about stewardship during the sermon portion of the service. I'm happy to speak for a shorter amount of time, anytime during the service, or come and set up a booth to speak to individuals before or after a service as well. Whatever works best for your church or ministry. And then, of course, the more people that invest with us, the more we are able to give back to the state of Nebraska. We provide grants. The fall has our ministry grant season. January 1st, our mission grant just opened. So if you have an individual that would like to go on a mission trip with their church or ministry and would be struggling to pay for that, those applications are now up on our website. We also have grants through our Nebraska United Methodist Foundation Gifts from the Heart Fund that can go towards greatest needs, youth and camping, church development, and again, pastoral education and support. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Janice.
Thanks, Kristine. And I think my role is to talk a little bit about the first steps that we've been doing at Camp Fontanelle related to establishing a legacy society, but also to show that this is doable, that small churches can take first steps to get going on planned giving in legacy societies. So a few thoughts to keep in mind, that what we're doing is not really fundraising, but raising friends. Think about it as friend raising. And I've come to decide that we don't really just pretend like we're friends. I think you really become friends more and more with the donors that you are working with. And it's our job to provide opportunities for people to discover and grow in love for the organization and the mission that you're representing. And here's an example from camp. Someone who was formerly employed at camp, the former employee told another person, Mr. Interested, about the camp. And he introduced Mr. Interested to camp leadership. They arranged a tour and they developed a mutual interest in the ministry. And now that particular Mr. Interested has become a major donor. And so it was the start of a beautiful relationship by making friends for the organization. When you think about the messaging for a planned giving society, you want to think about heroes. And it's the donors that are the heroes. It's not the church. It's not the organization. It's the donors and the mission that are doing heroic things. So think about the organization as kind of like a window that you pass through the donations, the mission, and the ministry recipients. So people are not looking at the window, they're looking at what's on the other side. And that's really what your mission and your planned giving society is. The donors see the ministry recipients. In our case, it tends to be children and youth campers rather than looking primarily at the camp. So important language that we're finding is the use of the word insiders. Planned donors are insiders. They are ultimately the ones that are highly invested in camp. So they have a heart for mission, and we want to return something to them. We want to return to them gratitude and a sense of value for their participation. So we return the value in the form of inviting them to special events and giving them a sense of their own value. So you ask yourself, what are these planned donors receiving that they would not otherwise have gotten? For example, you can ask their opinion. That shows that you value their opinion. You keep them up to date with important changes in news, and you would provide them other things, maybe opportunities to interact or take a tour of something that they wouldn't have seen otherwise. So let's look some, there we go. How do you get started? That's an action step. When you are thinking about a planned giving society, how do you establish it? Well, first of all, think about who's already most involved in the ministry. And you might ask yourself, who has capacity to make a transformational gift? And so when I think about it for an organization like a church, ask yourself, what would be a huge number that your organization might receive that would make a transformational effect on the mission and ministry? It might be $25,000, or for camp, it might be $1 million. Is there anyone already associated with your organization who has at least the capacity to make a transformational gift? You can look at the kind of donors who have already made significant contributions. For example, in our case, it would be the capital campaign that's been ongoing. So these major donors have significant influence already in the organization, significant influence. And you might think also about the automatic monthly donors. And these people are highly committed enough to put their commitment on autopilot. So for whatever your initial mailings might be, your target audience is most likely going to be empty nesters. That includes people like me. And the floor, I think, for empty nesters is at least 55, and literally more like 65 plus for your targeting audience. But be receptive to people who are in the 55 plus area. And also, you want to think about record keeping, because it gets complicated very, very quickly, and you're going to need something other than handwritten notes that you keep on note cards or note paper. So have a system that you can access outside of the audience, outside of the office. Now, for us at camp, we use something called Little Green Light, LGL. There are a bunch of others available, but LGL fits for us, and it has kind of a stratified fee system. But your existing software might be able to capture information. So that's something more than just dollars, but verbiage, comments that you would have about visits or interests that your donors might have. So back to identifying your group. So our group chose the name Giving That Grows because we thought it related to planned giving and kind of likened itself to an iconic image of Camp Fontanelle, which was the split oak at camp that's very well associated with it. So we came up with a logo, which is a drawing of a tree, and then also a photo. And the photo on the right is something that we're using for Giving That Grows, looking upward, thinking about growth and greenery and trees, and it all kind of comes back to the idea of growing at camp. So we created some other forms of helps like note cards that you can use when you send to your giving society. Now, a big action step is a cultivation event, finding people who might be participating eventually in planned giving. So we call it the Legacy Dinner. That's an annual event, and in this case, we're inviting both known planned givers, people who are already in our society, and also prospects for people who might be in the society. So allow your society members to invite other people. It's an invitational event. Help them to invite persons, and in this case, why would somebody come? And the answer is the meal. The meal has to be very appealing, and it's a reason for people to invite somebody to come to this event. And again, consider who to invite, who might reasonably be receptive to participating in the planned giving, going back to your target audience of empty nesters and 55 plus. All right, in our case, then we decided to send a cute, informative invitation. And I use the idea of the fat envelope. So make it look like there's something interesting inside the envelope. So it has to be a balance between thickness and increased postage, but we included several kinds of fun inserts, like a recipe. We have also included like a flat Ghirardelli chocolate and things so that people can tell there's something in there besides a piece of paper. On the invitations, here we go, I'm moving. There, okay, on the invitations. You notice, this actually has 4 sides, so the upper right, it would be the first page. On the back page, we included a menu, and it's got to sound delicious. Because again, that's really what people are going to be thinking, oh, that'll be really fun, you know, and it has to look like it's more than a business meeting. It has to look like it's something people will want to go to. So we included servers and a sit-down meal rather than a self-serve buffet. We did have decorations, and we worked to try to get more people involved in the planning and organization than just me and Kristine and 1 or 2 other people. The more people you can get involved in this kind of event, the better, because more people mean that people get better acquainted with the leadership and feel a higher sense of investment in the organization. And that's a good thing. So we had an agenda. Okay, and we had a bulletin and a PowerPoint kind of like this showing the order of the evening. And remember, particularly when you're talking about a senior audience, people are going to show up early. So if you have a 6 o'clock event, people are going to start showing up before 5:30. And like we say, the party starts when the first people get there. So what are you going to start doing when the first people get there at 5:15? Have something available. So we did have kind of a pre-show event. In the program, we have news about the camp, meet the staff members, some good news about what's happening at the ministry and what's coming up next. And we also included an introduction to planned giving, which you will get a taste for what that's like later here in this webinar. And I think people don't necessarily memorize it all, but what they come away from is the idea that planned giving gives you options. And there are people who know how this works. And I can take this forward to somebody who knows how this works. Remember also to have a response card so that people might indicate whether they are already including your organization, your church in their estate plans, or whether they want more information. But again, have a response card for the people who are participating to fill out that you can take home. So one of the big takeaways from this legacy event is that even people who say they are interested and indicate that they want to include your church or your organization in their estate plans, they do not act quickly. So what we're finding out is that the donor has in mind what this donor is going to do when they next approach their family or their attorney or their estate planners. They're not going to do it next week because they came to this meeting. They're going to do it down the road. It could be months down the road. So the moral of the story is patience and keep the reminders coming to the congregation and the donors or the prospective plan givers. So we want that idea to always be fresh in their mind. This is something that they are intending and planning to do when they get together with their estate planners. Okay, so what are some ideas about how to provide value to the donors? What will they receive that they would not otherwise have received because of their participation? So what are you providing to these valued insiders? And again, that idea of insider is very appealing. So at Camp Fontanelle, we've had a summer tour of the camp and construction and always have refreshments. This is kind of a church thing. So if you come to church for something and there's no refreshments, they feel like we haven't had what we wanted, right? What did I get back for it? So that's a way of showing hospitality. And ask for their opinion, I guess, whatever you're doing when you're involved with these kind of donors. A second action step we did was to have an annual party. And this is for the society members. Now, there's a difference between the invitational event and the party for the society members. And the challenge, one of your challenges is to figure out how they are distinct. It's not the exact same thing that you have twice a year. The first one, the legacy event, the invitational event, is where you invite people who you would like to become planned givers. The annual party are only for the society members. and a few of their guests, like a family member. So how is that going to be different than what you did earlier? Okay, so let's take a look at that. One way that we're trying to do it is it's a party. Party. Fun. Again, nothing's a business meeting, it's fun. And we had a fancier meal and a bigger budget, and we spent about $25 per person on the meal, and I am all about the desserts. Kristine knows that. So we had very special desserts. And for me, a special dessert is not a sheet cake with frosting. So, okay, you can talk to me about desserts if you need better ideas. Okay. But we also had table hosts and games and music and fun things to convey party. Okay. Also at our annual party, we highlighted what our society members are doing, as in what their gifts are doing to forward the mission and ministry of your organization. We are including a section kind of emeritus members, and that would be people who have passed on. Your planned giving members who are no longer with us in person, but are a part of that great cloud of witnesses. So we never want to let go of the fact that they are still part of your planned giving society. So we're having pictures of them and bios that we can always celebrate. And we included family members of those who have passed in our planned giving society. Okay. Within that party, again, we tell insider news, again, insider, first information. You're going to hear it first. It's not necessarily a secret, but you're going to hear it first. We gave them a bound copy, kind of a fancy looking copy of a strategic plan, and also a photo-rich booklet about what's happening around camp, and also highlighting somebody's story, somebody's life who was touched because of your organization. And we also included an invitation to an upcoming insider event. All of that happened at the party. And then, of course, we had nice gift baskets. And remember, literature is not a gift. So give them an actual gift. And then we sent thank you notes later. Our goal is to have at least a quarterly contact, which we are moving toward. So that would probably be multiple gifts each year. And then invitations to other events. And remember, we're trying to return value to them so that they feel valued, that they evaluate positively their participation. That means that they feel good about their impact and also the appreciation for their donation. And when the donors feel more satisfied, they will speak better about the organization, about their participation, and it leads to great word of mouth about your ministry and mission. So another goal that we're working on is in the public area of our camp or your church, make sure to somehow display the names of your society members. It's a public appreciation of their commitment to your church or your organization, and it's an encouragement to others, because when people see the names of somebody that they know who are planned givers, they get the idea that real people do this. People I know really do this, and you want people to have the idea it's something that I could do too. So we will have questions. Shall we wait till the end?
Sure, yep, and I don't see any pop up on chat anyway, but real quickly, does anyone have just a quick question?
And you can always call me also, or reach out to Kristine and get that information.
Okay, then Ashley, you are up, and I will just ask you to go ahead and tell me when to move to the next slide, since I can't see too much there.
Awesome. Hello, my name is Ashley, and I work as a planned giving specialist for the Resurrection Foundation in connection with Church of the Resurrection in Leawood, Kansas. The Resurrection Foundation helps donors to create a legacy through a planned gift, which often arrives through a bequest from a will or a trust in support of the church. We have the opportunity to sit down with donors on a daily basis and invite them to create their own unique answer to the question, how can we help God transform God's world through planned giving? Now, at this time, having served in small and medium-sized churches since 1998, I might be thinking, wow, planned giving ministry sounds amazing, but I'm busy preaching, I'm busy teaching, I'm busy caring for my congregation, and I'm in charge of the ministry fund. Future giving, I don't have time. If that's you, today I'd like to change your minds, because at Resurrection Foundation, if you can flip the slide, we truly believe that planned giving ministry can make a discipleship impact on our congregation right away and in the near-term future. We see it as a discipleship impact on the persons who make the decision to leave a planned gift. One, they can give back to God a gift, perhaps a tithe of all that God has generously given to them throughout their lives. Two, they can create a significant, transformative, incredible impact on a ministry or mission that's of particular importance to them. And three, they can model extravagant generosity for their children, for their grandchildren, for their nieces, for their nephews, or even for other church members. Discipleship impact is our immediate blessing from planned giving ministry. There's also a congregational impact that comes in the near-term future too. According to the Center for Economic Development and Business Research, right here in the state of Kansas, Kansas girl, there will be a $300 billion wealth transfer from one generation to the next in the next 20 years. Of that $300 billion, $12.5 billion will be set aside for planned gifts. Churches in Kansas typically receive 29% of all generosity, which means that if we are simply asking, we can be a part of receiving nearly $4.5 billion from future ministry and missions. Now that's Kansas, but we're neighbors, so I imagine Nebraska stats are very similar. Now, if I have you interested in learning more, I'd like to flip the slide and share a couple of effective marketing tools you may want to consider for your planned giving ministry. First, you're going to want to create a strong team. Fill your planned giving ministry team with persons who are passionate about their generosity. Also, fill your team with persons who are passionate about planned giving, experts in planned giving. Think about attorneys, accountants, financial planners, or persons you know who are just incredibly generous. In addition to a strong planned giving ministry team in the church, you're going to want to get yourself an expert. Guess what? The Nebraska United Methodist Foundation would be thrilled to serve as your expert. They can help you with documents. They can help you establish a ministry fund. They can help you establish an endowment. And they can sit with you as you serve your donors. You don't have to be the expert. You have an expert in your own backyard that you can rely on. With a strong ministry team, the next slide is going to share some ideas on some strong marketing tools. Of course, we are not reinventing any wheels at the Resurrection Foundation. We simply have a strong website. We have a beautiful planned giving slide deck that we share with donors when we meet one-on-one. And we have a great brochure that donors can pick up at any location. They can pick it up when they stop by one of our offices, and they can pick it up when we have our special Sundays that we get to advertise in the sanctuaries. If you could flip the slide. You may be saying, okay, that's all good. We can do all that. I would like to invite you to consider what your communication strategy might be. Now, again, I've served in small and medium-sized churches since 1998, and everything on this list that I suggest for communication is transferable to any congregation and any planned giving ministry. First and foremost, we have two worship components. The first being that once a year, Pastor Adam preaches a beautiful legacy sermon where he invites each congregation member to consider leaving a tithe of their estate to the church to say thank you to God. On that same Sunday, we have Celebration Sunday in worship, where we have volunteers at each of our locations and at each worship service to answer questions, to pass out brochures, and to help interested persons sign up for more information. Pastor Adam will also sprinkle planned giving ministry stories of impact into our worship services throughout the year. The goal is that if Kristine hears a sermon on a Sunday about Miss Sally leaving a planned gift to support children in need, she might be inspired on Monday to reach out to her estate planner to do something similar about a ministry or a mission that's important to her. In addition to worship, we have a really strong care component. Now, myself, I am literally paid by the church to do this, but I also work with volunteers who are trained to sit down with donors who are interested in learning more information about planned giving. We have the opportunity to answer their questions about the Resurrection Foundation and to help them execute a planned gift once they've gotten in touch with their estate planner, their financial planner, or their accountant to prepare their planned gift. In addition to worship and care, we have a strong discipleship ministry. The first being that we offer estate planning seminars twice a year online for donors who'd like more information, high-level information about estate planning. We have volunteer attorneys who offer these seminars for us. And again, they're not specific to the persons on the call, but it helps to prepare the persons on the call to meet with their own estate planners. In addition to estate planning seminars, we have the Resurrection Foundation Legacy Society. This is the wonderful group that we invite each of our planned giving donors to join when they make a planned gift in support of the church. Now, at this point, you might be saying, how do you know when someone makes a gift? That's a great question. Obviously, through our communication strategy, through our marketing tools, we invite our donors to create what we call is a donor declaration. If you could flip this slide, I'll show you what that looks like. This document, which we have an electronic form on our website, as well as we use paper form too, because I'm a paper person, has information. It has demographic information. It has information about the incoming planned gift, including what type of asset the donor hopes to use. They can select what fund or funds at the Resurrection Foundation they'd like to support. They let us know the approximate value of the incoming gift. They let us know who they would like us to thank when the gift comes in. And they let us know if they would like to join the Resurrection Foundation Legacy Society. If they say yes, then they get to be involved in our special group. If you could flip the slide, I'll show you a couple of ways that we stay in touch with our Legacy Society throughout the year. First and foremost, we do our very best to have a beautiful annual report that we offer once a year, both in paper form and in digital form for our donors. On this document, it includes a thank you letter from Pastor Adam. It includes a thank you letter from our chairperson. It includes incredible stories of planned giving impact from several donors and our financials. This document will come out in the spring, but throughout the year, 4 times a year, if you could flip the slide, we also offer what we call director's updates. On our director update, this is simply an email we send out several times a year from our director, Debbie Nixon, and it provides updates on what's happening at the Resurrection Foundation, new ways to connect at the Resurrection Foundation, as well as maybe new funds that we have at the Resurrection Foundation. And we always offer our donors the opportunity to update their donor declaration with us. So that's all included in this once a quarter update that we touch base through email with. In addition to this, if you could flip this slide, I'll show you what we also do in terms of just reaching out to simply say thank you. Throughout the year, we'll try to touch base with our donors, both electronically and in card form, to simply say thank you. This was our beautiful Merry Christmas card that went out a few weeks ago for our Resurrection Foundation Legacy Society members. And we do this throughout the year whenever we have the chance to send out a simple note to say we're thinking of you and we are grateful. If you could flip the slide, I'll show you that we also have a couple of in-person events each year. This is an example of what we did last spring. It was called a special evening with Cameron Smith. Now, I imagine that photo might look a little fancy, but it's actually not quite fancy at all. Cameron is a musician at the church, a volunteer musician at the church. He's actually a medical doctor in Kansas City, but he sings at the church in the traditional music ministry. And he had just released a CD last year. And so we hosted a concert and he sang from his CD. He brought in members of the choir to be in ministry with him. And it was absolutely fantastic. Free. He was free, which is awesome, but it was a really special event. We had about 363 guests, volunteers, and Resurrection staff that participated in this event. And there in the left-hand corner, I'd like to point out that picture. That's one of our seminarians. We support several seminarians through the Resurrection Foundation, and he was sharing his testimony with our director as a part of this event. So stories of planned giving impact, beautiful music, and yummy dessert for Janice and me. If you could flip the slide, I'll show you our other event that we had last year, and this was in the fall. We took a Resurrection Foundation day trip from Resurrection Leawood all the way downtown into Kansas City, where we took a tour of the World War I Museum, and that was hosted by volunteers who are docents at the museum. And then after our special tour of the museum, we traveled on the bus, y'all, the bus, with 110 guests, and we went to Resurrection downtown, where we had a beautiful lunch with wonderful dessert for Janice. And we had our missions director speak. We had one of our community mission partners downtown speak. We had our location pastor from Resurrection downtown speak, and our executive director. Both of these events, while geared for the Resurrection Foundation Legacy Society members, We're also invitational to all members of the congregation who wanted more information about planned giving. It is literally the joy of my salvation to sit down with donors on a daily basis and help them to create their own unique answer to the question, how can we help God transform God's world through planned giving?
Thank you, Ashley. And poor Matt, I empathize as a former practicing attorney myself. Court went long, as it does, and Matt is now on Zoom. And he will be doing exactly what Ashley just did. If you're ready to go, Matt, take it away. I can flip the slides when you tell me. And if you're talking right now, you are muted.
Good, thank you. I apologize again. Thank you for everyone for coming. I was supposed to be hosting this event, of course, so thank you, Kristine, for saving the day, and I'll thank my staff also for saving the day here. But yes, in addition to probate and estate planning, I also do litigation, and so that's what brought me up. I thought for sure I'd be back by 11:30 at the latest, but things happened differently, so I apologize and appreciate your patience with me. But I was asked, I'm here in the Burt County Courthouse, and they allowed me to use the jury room and their internet access. Wise proclamation, Kristine said, you should probably bring your computer so you could zoom in if you get caught up. So she might be more familiar with the litigation process than we thought. But be that as it may, I appreciate the opportunity to be able to present. And yes, if you'd like to queue up the first slide, we can get going. I see the fireplace is going, and I hope everyone is toasty and had a good lunch. And again, I regret not being able to see you in person and meet you, but we can certainly proceed here, and I can field questions. So how should we proceed? Should I bring up the PowerPoint on my screen and share it?
Oh, it's already, we can already see it. I assume that means you can't see it then.
No, I cannot see it right now.
Okay. Ashley, can everyone else on the Zoom's call see the PowerPoint?
Yes, it's on the about the speaker slide.
Okay, I need to go back to a different slide then. There we go.
So Matt, if you have your slides in front of you, just
I
go
do.
ahead and go.
Okay, I do. I've shared the screen now. So yes, we're on about the speaker. So yes, very briefly, this is me. I've been doing this for a little while. I'm my 26th year of practicing law. And a lot of it has been, of course, estate and business planning, as well as estate and trust litigation and creditor rights and commercial work. And there is still a part of my practice that deals with digital currency, including more recently estate planning involving digital assets and digital currency. So if you go on to the next slide, please.
Outline.
Yep, just a brief outline of where we're going to be going today, starting with just an overview, some tax issues, and going all the way down to examples. And the whole context of this is we have parishioners, you are pastors, you are dealing with people who may wish to give to the church, to a foundation, or a particular organization like Fontanelle. And there are different ways of doing that. And of course, you can be well versed in that. You don't necessarily have to be an attorney, of course, to know the various routes you can go down for these things. Now, it might take an attorney to draft these sort of documents up, and usually you want one with some experience specifically in estate planning, but generally they are very easy to accomplish. So let's go on to the next slide, please. There are a number of advantages, of course, to charitable giving that you can pass along to people who are prospective donors, and of course for your own personal edification. This way you can support the institution you're choosing. You can set an example, and of course improves the community when a church is a donor of a gift. Of course, we all know about income and capital gains deductions, but also people don't realize sometimes there is an advantage with inheritance taxes for people to have something in their estate plan to give a gift that might put them, for example, down a different bracket in the inheritance taxes, or even for purposes of Nebraska inheritance tax to almost eliminate that. You can include it in your estate plan, so you don't have to give anything now. And you can donate personal property items, whether it be furniture or a car or stocks or Bitcoins. Those are all things that you can use for donations. It's also, some people can't necessarily volunteer, so they might, you can say, well, there's always being a donor. And there are so many options to charitable giving. It's a very flexible process. Let's go on to the next slide, please. We might already be familiar, everyone here might be familiar generally with the income tax deductions of charitable giving, but I thought I would overlap those. Those are changing starting in 2023, but not radically so. Of course, if someone is giving a donation, they want it to be tax deductible. It does have to be an IRS Section 501c3 charity, and you can check that on the IRS website. There are limits to how much of your gross income you can donate, and the IRS provides that publication also. Let's go on the next slide, please. There are certain deductions that married and single people can have to the point where in making a donation would be helpful for them. So they might make a donation, but their deductions might be less than the threshold for doing itemized deductions. So with the relatively new tax laws involving that, that did hurt, of course, charitable organizations to some extent. People were not giving quite as freely. But at the same time, if they're cognizant that chances are, if they give certainly a significant donation, they probably reach that threshold. And if they're aware of that threshold, they'll be more likely to give. And they can also bunch donations, which is just a matter of, I'm going to give this year's donation at January 1st and next year's on December 31st. They'll still be countable in the same year. Let's go on to the next slide, please. Capital gains taxes. No one loves them, but they're there, and it can be a trap for people. And I think this is for parishioners. They need to be educated to some extent. The pastors probably have an idea about this already, but oftentimes the parishioners know that if you donate an item, you do it directly, or you can use the foundation. So it's a valuable resource that we have in the foundation in Kristine to be able to take assets such as stocks and take those, be an account for those, so that way the donor is not having to cash out the stocks, pay capital gains, and then donate. They can donate the full value of their stock, for example, or the asset, or the bonds, or even digital assets, and get the full value of the deduction for that, and no capital gains taxes need to be paid by anyone in that transaction. So very advantageous that they donate directly to the donee, whether it be a church or if your church in particular doesn't have that capacity, it doesn't have an account, a stock account to receive gifts, the foundation can do that for you. Let's go ahead and go on to the next slide, please. So inheritance taxes are also something that you can help minimize through donations. So these are separate from donations during life. And they could be in a will or a trust, and you can use them to help avoid inheritance taxes or at least reduce them. And I have in here, hardly anyone knows about Nebraska inheritance taxes or what the rates are, but they did change as of this year. The close family, for example, they still pay 1% inheritance tax, but now instead of a $40,000 exemption as of January 1st this year, it's a $100,000 exemption. And that means that if you give 10 people a gift of $110,000, they each get a $100,000 exemption, and so they each only pay tax on a $10,000 inheritance. So that's kind of how that is done. However, if it's a more distant relative, like an aunt and uncle, and not a mother, father, son, or daughter, then it's an 11% tax, which is significant. And they want to keep that in mind when they choose to whom they give their gifts and their wills and trusts. Everyone else who's not a family member, there's a 15% tax. Of course, if it's a charitable organization, there's no tax on those bequests. Let's go on to the next slide, please. And here are the federal estate tax. I keep telling clients, if you have a problem that you are reaching the present thresholds for federal estate taxes, then that's a great problem to have. So estates will generally, for married couples, need to have a combined series of assets of close to $26 million. to really have a big concern over federal estate taxes. So that's the rates vary from 18 to 40%, but it's possible that well, we might have some people at a church who wish to give and might have that problem of having $26 million. And so they can plan for that using trusts or just bequests in their will. But that's that $26 million. Each individual only has a $12.92 million estate tax deduction when they pass away. That's something that they can carry with them. It's called portability, and they can pass that deduction on to their spouse. Back in the old days, there'd be two trusts that estate planners would set up so that we could capture that spousal deduction, as it were, to preserve that, so that there was a trust set up, and that spousal share of a deduction would be put into a trust in a way. But the law changed about 3 or 4 years ago, so we don't have to do that anymore. The spouse can just say, when I pass away, my spouse will get my deduction and can use that. So instead of a $12.92 million deduction in 2023, if someone passes away and their spouse had already passed, then it's almost a $26 million deduction. Of course, the majority of people don't have this problem of having $26 million on hand. But again, great problem to have. Let's go on to the next slide, please. There are, of course, taxes on gifts. If you're not a charitable organization, then donors need to know, of course, that otherwise they would be paying gift taxes. And it's important too. For example, if they're giving a gift to a pastor for, like a Christmas gift or a pastor appreciation day, those might not be tax deductible, and they might even go towards the $17,000 limit on gift taxes. If they give it to a church general fund specifically for those purposes, that would be different, and that could be deductible. So that is something that perhaps churches can be well aware of. If you do have a sizable gift over $17,000, which I'm sure a pastor would love to get that kind of gift from a parishioner, that would be great. But that parishioner might have to fill out a Form 709, and that's something an accountant is usually do. Lawyers don't usually do those. The accountants handle those. Let's go on to the next slide, please. I don't want to discourage any parishioner of giving their pastor a gift of over $17,000, but they just need to be aware of that. Keep those receipts for anything over $250 is what people need to know. Canceled checks will work too. And then if there's a non-cash item like a car or stock or even real estate that's donated to a church or to an organization like Fontanelle, they just need to keep those receipts and have some sort of method of determining what the value is. For real estate, they might even want an appraisal before they donate it. For a car, they'd want to document the condition of the car and the mileage very carefully so that the IRS will accept that. And the IRS, for a large number of standard items, has their own charts in the various publications that are listed here on the slide. Let's go on to the next slide, please. So we can give gifts in a number of different ways in wills and trusts. A will, of course, is something that someone writes, and it's a guide for a personal representative to administer estate assets so that they go where the person who's passed away, it goes where they want them to go. The will directs where assets go. So this is just one example of a donation, for example. Trusts are slightly different. The trust can arrange for lifetime gifts in addition to gifts after they pass away. So trusts can be very flexible in that they can provide for income tax deduction while the person is alive, and then inheritance tax deductions after the person passes. So, so a trustee is the one who administers that. In a will, it's a personal representative or executor who administers things. In a trust, it's a trustee. And I'm told, and perhaps Kristine has already elaborated on how the foundation can possibly be a trustee, but does not usually have that role. And there might need to be some extra checking about that, and there might be some fees. Oftentimes, a family member is a good selection for a trustee as well. But whether there be a family member or a trust department at a bank or an attorney or a foundation, they might have fees. They might be entitled to that. The trust document will spell those out. Let's go on the next slide, please. Here's One form of trust that is usually especially useful for churches is a charitable trust. There are many types of charitable trust. They fall into different categories, but the Uniform Trust Code, and Nebraska adheres to the Uniform Trust Code, specifically provides for these types of trusts. And one of their many advantages is that they can last forever. You can have a 10,000-year trust if you want to, so long as it's for charitable purposes. And as of right now, a non-charitable trust, or even one that has some of its aspects are non-charitable, there are time limits for that. So, but if it's a purely charitable trust, all the proceeds, the beneficiaries are all exempt organizations by the tax code, then potentially it could last forever. Let's go on to the next slide, please. Of course, we talked a little bit about trustees already. A trustee is just the person who's responsible for administering the trust, which means you keep the beneficiaries informed, a very important part of the trust management, manage the assets and distribute the assets according to trust. And that could be anyone, but generally they can and oftentimes will charge fees for that. Let's go on to the next slide. One of the more useful and prominent types of trust is a charitable remainder trust. And I've outlined it here for your future reference in fairly good detail, including the benefits. But it's basically a trust that where you receive the income during your lifetime through a formula, either a percentage or set annuity payments. And then when the donor, the person who created the trust passes away, then the principal of the trust goes to charitable organizations such as a church or the foundation or wherever you would like it to go. So the advantages of that are that you get income from the assets, even though they've basically already been donated. You lower the estate taxes, capital gains taxes may be completely eliminated, and it's a good way. It's just a good way to make sure that it's like a pledge almost, but at the same time, the person donating the asset may have pledged the asset, but can receive income through their lifetime. Let's go on to the next slide, please. Kind of the opposite of a charitable remainder trust is a charitable lead trust. This is where people donate the assets, and basically you get an income stream for the charity, but then the principal goes somewhere else, possibly to a charity, but possibly not. So, and in those types of cases, it's possible that family members could receive what's left of the trust, the principal remainder of the trust, without taxes. There are also limits as to how much you can get in gifts from somebody. If it's a charitable lead trust, those might be eliminated too. These are very sophisticated documents, people drafting them, and people such as the trustees need to walk a pretty fine line. They need to go with grace and pray a lot when things, and then they need to ask for advice when things get complicated, but they are very effectively if they're managed well. If we go on to the next slide, please. I have found from personal experience that prayer does help trusts, so especially charitable ones. So that's always good. Never doubt the power of prayer, to be sure. One other type of trust that's very popular is a irrevocable life insurance trust. This is a trust where premiums are paid on an insurance policy. It could be a single on the life of one person, or it could be a second to die policy for a couple. And then the donations, there are tax advantages of the donations. Those are tax deductible. And it might be that the death benefit is much larger than the sum of the premiums and principal, so that the charitable organization may get a much larger gift as a result. So that's oftentimes whole life policies are used for that. And just about every major insurance company allows that. And it's very valuable. In fact, there might even be provisions for the trustee to use for charitable purposes the cash value that's accumulated in the whole life policy. And just about any insurance agent that does life insurance will have a lot of information about this. It does vary from company to company. Policies differ, but generally it's a very good way to fund a donation. If you want to go on to the next slide, please. There are other charitable trusts too. There are so many because A lot of them are custom work, and there's no limit to how many variations you can have. It's very flexible. You can have a trust that's based on an annuity, or a trust that just pays on the percentage of the fair market value of assets. But we would be here all day, which maybe we have, I don't know. You could wait for me to get back, but just studying all the different types of trusts, but I wouldn't put you through that. But there's so many different types of trusts. So if someone wants to donate in a particular way, it can probably be done. Let's go on the next slide, please. I brought in 2 examples. The next 2 pages are just examples of how someone could use a trust. Someone wants to donate to a church or a charitable organization affiliated with the church, and how that can be done, and just an illustration of how that would benefit them from a tax perspective. I use examples of Alice and Bob. Alice is the first example where she wants to create a charitable remainder trust and get lifetime payments, and then she has an asset to donate. And so she receives $25,000 in income, and at the same time gets a present day deduction and saves quite a bit of money, almost $100,000, assuming she has a 5% interest rate and what she's done for the trust. This is just one example of using a charitable trust to get a tax deduction now and a big benefit for the church later. Let's go on to the next slide, please. Bob is doing a will instead of a trust, which might be less expensive, actually, just to give out outright a bequest in a will. And to do that, he should probably take a look at his assets, and maybe he wants to give a fixed amount in his will, such that, for example, he wants to give it to the foundation to be administered as a charitable trust upon his death. He doesn't have to change his existing will. He can do a short change to his will called a codicil, which is just legalese for making a change to an existing will. His deduction then allows him to reduce the, granted the children get a reduced gift, which they might not be entirely happy with, but they can live with it, I'm sure. But at the same time, they would not have to pay any inheritance taxes. The estate is actually who pays those, but one way or the other, a great donation is made to the church, and taxes are minimized or avoided as a result. Let's go on to the next slide, please. I think that's it for slides, actually. That's our team at Burnett Wilson Law. We have a number of estate planners and some estate litigators as well that can help if there are any questions. Certainly, there won't be any charge for any questions from the United Methodist team, whether it be a foundation or a charitable organization associated with it or church. We do a lot of this sort of work, and I came on about 3 years ago to found the estate litigation department. They didn't have litigators. So I found that knowing how things go wrong can usually help me plan and prevent things from going wrong in the future. That's the benefit of a litigation practice. The disadvantage is that I'm frequently not in the office when I completely think I will be. So you can just go on to the next slide. I think I'm even with time. Thank you, everyone. Thank you and I appreciate your patience. Again, I was really looking forward to meeting everyone that was showing up in person, and I'm the one who's not there. So, but I do enjoy this. I want to make sure that everyone keeps in their prayers, everyone who might be going through the process of deciding what to do or how to donate and things like that. Oftentimes, the guidance comes from friends or family or their pastor, or sometimes someone higher up. But one way or the other, I found that, like I said, not just for charitable trust, but prayer will go a long way for decision-making. Informed decision-making can also be made if they talk with an accountant or with an attorney who's specialized in this sort of area. So it doesn't have to be my firm, but it could be just any estate planning law firm would be able to help. I'm also available for any questions. I think the OWL will allow me to take questions both online and in person, if we're doing that.
Well, just real quick, I built in one more slide for myself, unless I moved away. What's next? And I did not get the apostrophe S there in the title. So sorry. Pet peeve of mine. What is next? And so the Nebraska United Methodist Foundation is here to help you. So you've got all this information from the seminar today. What do you do with it? Well, first, check with your congregation. Has anyone already left your church or Methodist ministry in their wills? find out that information and start keeping that data. You will want to create remittance envelopes. As Janice pointed out in her part, you want to have something there available if you do host a legacy dinner for education, just to start gathering that information. And then reach out to me, reach out to any of us at the foundation. We would like to help you host your legacy dinner, educate your congregation, start your legacy society, and consistently thank them and help it grow. We would like to be that partner in ministry to help you build that at your church or ministry. We've already got a great example in Nebraska at Camp Fontanelle with some base work on how to get there and grow. And I would be happy to help store that data for you if your church committees that lead that turn over. And then to, again, help those leaders at your church or ministry plan those events and thank those donors. And that's all you do then, promote and honor your new Legacy Society members. And so we are out of time today, but real quickly, are there any pressing questions that anyone really wants to get asked while we're all here? Okay. Okay, then I have recorded this webinar, so you can have access to it to watch again or to share with anybody that you know on the Nebraska United Methodist Foundation website. You'll also find my contact information there. And then if you didn't see any speakers' contact information in the slides as they went through, please just send me an email and I will get you anyone's contact information that you are looking for. Otherwise, I will thank you and everyone have a great day.
And thank you, everyone. Feel free to stay. I might not be there, but feel free to stay. Something I once learned out east is it's not really hospitality unless you abuse it. So by all means, take an extra pot from the fridge or whatever you need and ask the staff for help. So again, I apologize that I wasn't there in person to meet you and be part of the event personally, but I appreciate your patience. So hope to meet you again
Thank you,
sometime in the
Ashley.
future.